Huh? What is bro talking about? Hamza's gonna fight the champion next? No one's ever had 7 fights without fighting for a title? Khamzat Chimaev just had an interview after his illness where he pulled out against Robert Whittaker. I'm gonna have to emphasize that later. That for his next fight, he's gonna be at UFC 308, most likely, not confirmed, but he's saying that's most likely where he's going to fight next, in Abu Dhabi. And that he's gonna fight the champion, or he'd like to fight the champion next. Because no one in the UFC has won 7 times in a row without fighting for a title. And I am pretty sure he means win streak and not total fights, because if we're counting total fights, then technically Jim Miller has like 40 without fighting for a title. But if we're talking about a win streak, he is so off the mark. He's so wrong on that. Hold on, let me open my book here. All the fighters that had a longer win streak or unbeaten streak than Khamzat Chimaev before they ever fought for the title, and some never even did. Charles Oliveira, Merab Dvalishvili, Arnold Allen, Bilal Muhammad, Ian Gary, Michel Pereira, Mavsar Evloev, Beneil Dariush, Donald Cerrone, Michel Prazeres, Yoel Romero, and John Fitch. And the reason why that's important to note is because Hamzat's argument to get a title shot is that he had a longer win streak than anybody else without getting one. When in reality, there are fighters right now currently that have a longer win streak than he does, and they haven't fought for the title yet. Like Merab Dvalishvili has a 10 win streak. He had to get 10 wins in a row to fight for the title. Mavsar Evloev is right now on an 8 win streak. Same with Ian Gary. Bilal's on a 10 unbeaten streak, if you include that Leon no contest. Arnold Allen was on a 9 win streak before he lost to Max Holloway. Michel Pereira right now is on an 8 win streak as well. Like, Hamzat's a good fighter and all, he's exciting to watch when he's actually fighting and making weight. The middleweight division needs someone like him to actually compete, but the man's become extremely delusional, and I'm not talking about his fighting skills. That's the norm for fighters to think that they are the best in the world, of course, but his claim to a title shot is completely faulty. If he's going to get a title shot, it's not because of his win streak as the main reason. It's more of his popularity. I don't expect him to get a title shot. This is the same guy that missed weight by 10 pounds at 170, and now he just pulled out against Whittaker. Whittaker was willing to step in against Ikram Aliskerov, right? He was willing to take that risk against a non-ranked opponent. Could you imagine if Robert Whittaker lost that fight? The guy would never sniff a title shot ever in his career again. But Whittaker took that risk, beat Ikram in devastating fashion, and for Hamzat to have the gall to say that he's gonna get a title shot before Whittaker? My man, you pulled out. Whittaker stayed in and fought that night. I can imagine Whittaker rolling his eyes hearing Hamzat say something like that. Even Drick is gonna be like, what is this guy talking about? Whittaker deserves a title shot over Hamzat at this point, merely for the fact that he stayed in and fought that night where Hamzat couldn't, and Hamzat was ill, right? So it makes sense why he didn't stay in the fight, but saying he wants to fight for the title next is extremely delusional. Hamzat is the same guy who made a name for himself on fighting back-to-back weeks, and everybody was excited about that. Everybody loved Hamzat when he was willing to fight that quickly. But since July of 2020, 4 years ago, almost exactly, he has fought only 5 times. Now, not all of that was on him because he did get ill multiple times, but still 5 fights in 4 years. There are fighters on the roster right now who get like 4 to 5 fights in a single year. And in those 5 fights, one of them he missed weight by 10 pounds. In my opinion, Hamzat should fight someone like maybe Paulo Costa, maybe Jared Cannonier. He could fight Vettori. There's a lot of opponents for Hamzat because we have to remember that he's still ranked only number 11. He's number 11 in the top 15. Anyone above him is a potential opponent for him. Costa could be the fight because they wanted to fight in the past, and I think it would be a pretty big build-up. The press conference would be entertaining. The fight would be exciting. Hamzat go up against one of the biggest guys in the division. The Jared Cannonier fight is good for Hamzat because it's a top 5 opponent. That's what everybody wants to see from him. Everybody wants to see Hamzat beat a top 5 fighter in the middleweight division, and Cannonier is number 5, so stylistically that's a good matchup for Hamzat, and it's a guy who's much older, probably on the decline because of his age, and that could propel him into a title fight or another top 5 win afterward. Or someone like Marvin Vettori is just a solid fight in the top 7, but Hamzat wants to leapfrog literally 10 fighters above him. These guys are in line in front of him. He wants to jump over all of them to fight the winner of Dricus and Adesanya. I don't know if Adesanya would take the fight, but I'm pretty sure Dricus will tell him to kick rocks, because in Adesanya's career right now, he might be willing to take up any big fight. He's been a champion, he had a lot of title defenses, he fought top contenders, and maybe Hamzat is the next opponent he would like next. We have no idea. Whereas Dricus is a new champion, he wants to build his legacy, and I don't think he'd be willing to give Hamzat a title fight, because he knows all the fans would say Hamzat didn't deserve it. Why is Dricus giving this guy a title shot when Strickland is there, when Whittaker is there, when Imavov is there, and Hamzat hasn't been a single fighter in the top 15 of the middleweight division? division. The best middleweight that he beat, besides Kamaru Usman, who's a welterweight, like a true middleweight that he beat was Gerald Meerschaert or Ikram Aliskerov, but the Ikram fight was at 180. It was a catchweight. Or another fight they could do is if Whittaker fights Strickland for the #1 contender spot. If Strickland is willing to actually fight Whittaker, he said multiple times he's not, and he's waiting out for his title shot. If they can get Whittaker to fight Strickland, then you do Hamzat versus Imavov or something. There's a lot of matchups for Khamzat Chimaev. And even though Hamzat got sick, and that is out of his control, how are they going to give him a title shot knowing that he's gotten sick multiple times throughout his career already and pulled out of fights? They have to make sure he can get in there healthy before risking him pulling out of a title fight. And he also has to go up at least against a top 15 guy. Top 10, top 5 is preferable before you ever fight for a belt. Hamzat beat Kamaru Usman, who's a very good fighter, of course, but he was a welterweight and stepped up in short notice. And Hamzat nearly lost that fight too. He beat Gerald Meerschaert and John Phillips in the middleweight division. Those are his middleweight wins. In the welterweight division, of course, he beat Gilbert Burns, which was an amazing fight and all that, but he's also very inactive, right? He doesn't fight that often. In other news, did you guys see Anthony Smith respond to TJ Dillashaw? He was like calling him out for PEDs and stuff like that, and he did say that TJ hurt his feelings a bit with saying that he gives up in fights, and who gave him the nickname Lionheart? Did he give himself that nickname? But TJ's always been kind of like that, he will give out his opinions on certain fighters and stuff. But it's funny because what both fighters said about each other aren't really incorrect. TJ did pop for PEDs. I don't know if he did it his whole career like Anthony Smith said, but he definitely popped for PEDs before, and Anthony Smith has quit in fights before too. Oh, and there is an update about the Topuria and Holloway fight, according to Ariel at least. So Ariel said that the Topuria and Holloway fight was incorrectly leaked by the French broadcast in Canada, right? They're the ones that leaked it. They're the ones that said that Topuria, Holloway, O'Malley, and Merab are fighting on the Sphere card. Ariel said the guy that read that was mistaken because he believes that Topuria versus Holloway is happening the month after that. So October for that, and O'Malley and Merab is going to headline the Sphere card instead. They're also looking to have Grasso versus Shevchenko, and we do know that the card is going to have 10 total fights. Some of the fights have been confirmed already, like Michelle Pereira versus Anthony Hernandez, which is actually a very good fight. Jasmine Yargway versus Caitlin Souza, that's a pretty decent fight as well. Edgar Shirez versus Kevin Boreas, Irina Aldana versus Norma Dumont. I'm definitely watching that fight. Ronaldo Rodriguez versus Odi Osborne, and Ignacio Bahamondes versus Manuel Torres. That's a pretty good fight. But hopefully these are all like prelims or something, right? Except the Pereira Hernandez fight, I could see that either headlining the prelims or being like the first fight on the main card. Michelle Pereira definitely has a lot of steam going, man. He has a lot of momentum. Again, on a huge win streak. He seems to be a way better fighter in the middleweight division, but Hernandez is going to be a hard guy to knock out, and he has good wrestling and good jiu-jitsu. So that's 6 fights, and if it is O'Malley versus Merab as the main event, and Grasso versus Shevchenko is probably the co-main event or something, just thinking hypothetically here. I wonder what else they'll put on the main card. But I guess that's kind of like the news today. Hamzat has to fight someone like Costa or Cannonier or something. Get healthy, make weight, and fight a contender.